welcome back to Ramsey's Reality with your host, me, Paul Ramsey. I'd like to thank everybody for coming back, joining me for another week of great topics to discuss. This season is a relaunch, and this is our next episode of Conspiracy Theories. And this one here is kind of a new one for me. I don't know very much about it, but I have been looking into it, and after reading about it, it's funny because I think some of these things make a lot of sense. So I don't really know if it's a conspiracy or if it's mind manipulation that we're doing to ourselves based off of what we thought we knew. But today we're talking about the Mandela Effect. Basically, it's a phenomenon where large groups of people share the same false memory, often with high confidence and emotional certainty about events, phases, logos, or phrases, details that do not match recorded reality. The term, coined in 2009 by Fiona Broome, was discovered that she and many others widely remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in 1980, complete with news coverage, a funeral, despite Mandela actually being released in 1990 and dying in 2013. So we're going to talk about some of the main theories and conspiracies around what they call the Mandela Effect, ranging from psychological explanations to reality-altering hypotheses, often explored in conspiracy theories. So the first one is, and the core idea here is, human memory is not a recording. It's a reconstructive thought. Each time we recall something, we subtly rewrite it in our mind, influenced by suggestion, repetition, and social reinforcement. And this is called false memory and collective misremembering, and it's a psychological theory. So how it happens: the brain fills gaps with what we think makes sense, if that makes sense. Similar memories blend together, and repetition strengthens incorrect details. Confidence increases with group validation. And actually, I think this is where this actually comes into play with a lot of us, because I feel like I have remembered things or believed things and come to find out it wasn't actually real, or it wasn't actually like I pictured it or how some other people pictured it, but we all believed it because we collectively agreed with it. One example is the Bernstein Bears. Everybody's read those books. I think I read them growing up in elementary school. The spelling looks right, and it has a lot to do with the spelling, not necessarily the books themselves. Because if you have, Bernstein, it's the way it's spelled is Stein, and that's a common surname ending. Stain, not A, feels less familiar, but once a person says it with enough confidence, others agree. The weakness of this theory is it doesn't fully explain identical detailed memories shared by millions, but many people recall learning or seeing the incorrect version before the internet era. So even though we believe that it was spelt one way, that until the internet came out and everything was published online, we could only see it or believe it in one way, which is physically on the book. The next theory is confabulation and memory filling. Now, the core idea behind this is when the brain lacks complete information, it fills in missing details automatically without a person realizing it. Like movie quotes, logos, brand names, childhood memories. I'll give you an example. The Monopoly Man. The Monopoly Man, everybody remembers him with that monocle, the little thing over his eye, looks fancy. Truth is, he never had one. Confusion, then the confusion likely comes from a combination of Mr. Peanut, because at the same time, the Monopoly Man wore a top hat, Mr. Peanut wore a top hat, but Mr. Peanut had the monocle. And of course, our thoughts of old aristocrat cartoon stereotypes that also flaunted or had these little eyeglasses. It feels real though, because confabulation memories are just as vivid as real memories. And this brain, or I'm sorry, our brain, does not tag them as imagined. We really think these things happened. Now, again, I don't know if this is a conspiracy necessarily, but the theories behind it consider it a conspiracy. Now, I do agree with some of these that our brains, I think, do mess with us, and we try to remember things the best we can, but we don't actually remember them exactly how they were, because unless you have an eidetic memory or some other form of that, no, not everybody can remember everything all the time. Social reinforcement theory and internet amplification. So the core idea behind this one is the internet synchronizes memory errors. Before mass communication, false memory stayed isolated. What that means is, before the internet and before all this technology, if somebody believed something falsely, there was nowhere to put it and for that thing to be spread as false information. Because back in the day, before technology and cell phones, you could put everything on the internet. If you wanted to spread information, you had to write letters, you had to put stuff in the paper, you had to make TV ads, you had to make commercials, billboards. Like, you couldn't just take 5 seconds, post it online, send it out, and see what everybody said. Okay? So now, people can search anything. And a lot of times, you'll see it all the time on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. Do you remember? And everybody will say yes or no. And then once everybody either agrees or disagrees, then the memory becomes validated, whether it was right or wrong. Because 9 out of 10 people are going to agree probably one way, and you're going to have that one person agreeing the other way, saying, no, that's not right. And then it spirals from there. So the psychological effect of this is group consensus overrides your doubt, and confidence increases when the evidence contradicts the memory. So group consensus says you're right, but actual evidence proves that your memory is wrong. So psychologically, you're torn because you believe it one way, but the facts is you're wrong, or you're right. You could be right. I mean, if you think one way or the other, that's just the theory here that we're going with. And this creates a feedback loop. A false memory equals validation, pushed by reinforcement, until it's certainly what you believe. Now, the next theory, I am not as familiar with. It's called the schema theory. It's pattern expectation. So the core thought behind this is your brain stores information in schemes, basically templates for how you think things should be remembered. And makes sense, because there's a lot of ways or things that you probably do that you feel are supposed to be in a certain order when you think about them. Could be how you grew up, could be how your kids grew up, how you make it, do anything. It's in your mind, this is how it should be done. Um, when the brain thinks something violates the expectations of what you thought, your brain corrects it automatically. It's kind of like reading a sentence, but people move the letters and you still read it correctly, like because the brain is acknowledging it as this one, how it's supposed to be read, even though it's worded wrong and there's letters and numbers mixed in, but you still read it correctly because your program, you've read this, you know these words, and you read them how you thought they looked. Just how some people can make the mistake of reading the wrong word because it was put, backwards in a sentence, or like how people purposely do that to trip somebody up. You might read it right, but that's not exactly what it said. So, example here is Luke, I am your father. Sounds more natural than the actual line, and who remembers what the actual line is? Especially if you're a Star Wars fan. If you don't, you haven't watched the movie enough, or one, this is your brain tricking you into thinking this is what he actually said. And it's not. The actual line of that movie is, no, I am your father. Go back and watch it if you don't believe me. Go back and watch it if you don't believe me. Fruit of the Loom. A cornucopia feels more logical with a fruit imagery. Like the little cornucopia, and it has the fruit hanging out of it, like at Thanksgiving with the pilgrims and stuff. Things that we don't really see very often now. But the logo itself never had one. It's just fruit. It never had the little cornucopia thing. Honestly, I don't remember that one. I don't know where that one came from. It is what it is. But it was interesting when I read it that it actually, some people thought it actually had the cornucopia, but I don't know. That's just me. But the problem with this theory is the Mandela effect involves highly specific visual details, not vague expectations. So the Mandela effect itself is highly specific to certain thoughts and not just vague and gray, and leave you kind of wondering what this expectation of your thought of this thing would be. So the Mandela effect does give a lot more detail, at least to what you think you thought, if that makes sense. The parallel universe, the multiverse theory, and this is a complete conspiracy theory. The core idea: we are shifting between parallel time frames from a previous reality. And again, that's kind of like the last week when we talked about aliens and, this guy right here over my shoulder, stuff like that. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying us shifting timelines and parallel universes and whatever the thing, whatever you guys might think. I'm just not sure if I am in line with that. I mean, I am a spacey person. I do believe a lot of things about space, and we're gonna have some conversations, about space and Earth and stuff like that coming up. And that's gonna be, pretty interesting. But the theory draws from quantum mechanics, the multiverse hypothesis, many words, a many worlds interpretation, not words, worlds. It's explained by reality splits constantly. Your consciousness may move between timelines, and some memories persist from previous versions of reality. This kind of falls into that catchphrase that I have where your reality is optional, because you choose to believe what you want to believe. Nobody can change that. That's, it's totally on you what you believe when it comes to your reality. Some people live in a completely different mind than a lot of people. And this is a conversation that is had, on a weekly basis that, such and such lives in their own world, and this is their world. We're just living in it, type of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like some memories just persist in our and from a previous version of a different reality. Now, supporting claims on this are sudden changes noticed by large groups, residual memories that feel emotionally anchored, and there's no gradual transition. Changes feel almost instant. It's like going to a football game and your team's winning, and the next thing you know, something horrible happens, an interception, a fumble, and you can just feel the energy go. Woof. That's what kind of instant feeling, instant change we're feeling here. Famous examples of this are Mandela's death, Shazam. You actually guys know. You know what? I seen this on. Is it Disney or Netflix? But the movie Shazam, the Sinbad genie movie, that supposedly never existed. It does. I've seen it. Um, but you know what? Now that I think about it, Shazam. That was Shaq. I think that was Shaq. I'm gonna look at that because I know I've seen it because I was like, because he's standing on the thing like this with the little hat on, and I think there's a kid. Anyways, whatever. I'm pretty sure it's Shaq. Yeah. Anyways, but logos changing overnight. And nowadays it's a lot harder for logos to change because the internet, people have pictures, there's constant reminders of a lot of these things in the world that just can't change without somebody noticing. And if somebody doesn't notice or does, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's immediate. And somebody's going to say something and it's going to go offline. You know what I'm saying? Like, do 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 do. There's going to be tinging. Like, what is this? What is this? It's like Cracker Barrel getting dinged for theirs, and they actually changed it back because people didn't like the new logo, which is crazy. Like, as a company, do what you want. Like, I don't feel, and this is one of those things where I don't feel like peer pressure should sway a company on doing things. Okay, we're not going to get into that's a whole nother subject. Criticism from this is no empirical evidence. It's not falsifiable, and this relies heavily on personal testimony. So you got to have the proof. Without proof, all it is word of mouth, and people have to go on their word of mouth if they're going to believe these things to be true. Now, this one I've never heard of. CERN. Reality manipulation. Reality manipulation theory. The core idea is experiments of CERN's Large Hadron Collider altered reality. It's a mouthful. Believe me, I looking it up, and it's like I said, some of these things are far fetched. Again, these are conspiracies. Some of these things, when I started digging into them, I've never heard of. But the believers claim that high energy particle collisions damage space time. That means timelines at one point were merged or altered, and the reality was subtly rewritten. Again, I do not go with these type of theories. Overall, I understand that we're gonna forget things, and when we forget things, we tend to believe other things, or we tend to, like we just talked about, fill the voids in our head with what we believe. So the common claim to this CERN is Mandela effects increased after 2012 when the LHC was fully operational. Scientifically, no mechanism exists linking particle collisions to macroscopic reality changes, correlation, and causation. Basically, there's nothing that proves any of this has ever happened. Um, and I'm sorry if you guys are tired of me waving my hands around, but I talk with my hands, and it's hard sometimes when you're sitting. If I could do this while walking around and being able to see what I need to see, then it'd be great. But simulation theory, this is reality editing. And the core idea behind this one is reality is a simulation. And the Mandela effects are glitches, patches, and retroactive updates to our lives or thoughts and conscious memories. So it's like a computer game or a computer where we're running at full speed, and all the Mandela effect is glitches in our processing, and we rethink what we thought we knew and fill it in with things that may or may not be true. But the memories remain because our conscious catch wasn't fully overwritten, which means our memory data persist after the updates. So again, it's like being a computer. You're running, but then your disk space gets low because you have too many things stored in your computer from all those cookies from all the websites you've been to. So what happens? You run out of space, and you've got to clean yourself up, and you got to go clear your cookie cache and delete all those bookmarks and save things that are slowing your processing down. And once you clear all that up, you'll start to think clear again, and you won't fill in until you get full again. You won't fill in your memories with things that weren't actually there. And the supporting ideas for this are digital artifacts, reality behaving inconsistently, and changes without historical transition. Now, I'm not real positive, I'm not going to lie, about historical transitions or your reality behaving inconsistently. I think, and I don't even know. I don't even know how to just explain that. Like, to me, if someone's reality is behaving inconsistently, they've lost their mind. They're probably going crazy, and they've short circuited. I don't know what to tell you on that one. The popular phrase, I guess, in this circumstance would be, the file was changed, but your memory wasn't. So we believe the Monopoly man had a monocle, but he didn't. But we still believe it. So the file changed, but our memory didn't. We still think he's got one, even though he doesn't. And the last one here on this theory is psychological resistance to uncertainty. The Mandela effect persists because it challenges identity and expectations. Admitting false memory means admitting the brain is unreliable, personal experiences can be wrong, and reality is less stable than assumed. For many, altered reality explanations feel safer than accepting For many, altered reality explanations feel safer than accepting memory fallibility. So, what you feel to be true to us feels like a good thing because we would rather try to remember something how we think it's supposed to be rather than admit nothing is actually how it was, and this is just for how we're perceiving it to be. Now, for anybody that studies the Mandela effect, anybody that is a doctor or does studies about these type of things, maybe you can weigh in the comments and tell us a little bit about your studies and your backgrounds, about how the Mandela Effect or perceived Mandela Effect and different variations of these theories might play in how you've seen patients or people react to the, I guess, discussions maybe that you're having of these, or maybe studies or group therapies maybe that people are having. Because, I mean, it is an interesting, thing because how many things out there do people really think happened one way? And I'm not saying like just thoughts, like actual like, movies, cartoons, things that we remember growing up or seeing on a regular basis that we feel now, were one way and they actually weren't. We just imagined them that way for whatever reason. I'm not talking about people that are making up timelines for crimes they committed or anything like that. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm just talking about real world, like, things that we thought we knew but actually weren't because we've perceived them to be a different way in our minds. And the Mandela effect is so powerful. It involves emotionally anchored memories, so deep core memories that we remember. That's why they say it affects us like it does, and it affects millions simultaneously. Like there's not just me believe one thing about one particular thing. There could be hundreds of thousands or millions of people out there that all believe the same exact thing about the same exact thing. It challenges trust and perception because we're trusting that what's being said is true, even if it's not. But it also blurs the line between science, philosophy, and belief. So when these things clash, it's blurring those lines because what we believe may not scientifically make sense, but what scientifically makes sense may not be actually what we believe. And when we get to one of our episodes coming down the road here, we're going to get into that because it's going to have a lot to do with what we believe and science being put to the test when it comes to how we feel about certain things. Whether psychology or metaphysical, the Mandela Effect taps into our deeper fear, which, if we can be wrong about the past, what else is unstable for our future? But I would like to thank everybody for listening. I would like to reiterate that your reality is optional. I would love feedback, comments. I would like for everybody to, share, subscribe, rate the show, put your your thoughts into the comments. Leave your messages. DM me if you guys have any background on the Mandela Effect, and I hope everybody thinks a little bit different. About the theories, the Mandela Effect. I guess I didn't really know what it was at first, and because I've always heard it, and once I dug into it, I was like, you know what? The Monopoly Man did have a thing, but he didn't. Just like I always say, Luke, I am your father. Even though I know it's, no, I am your father. Anyways, whatever. Mandela Effect does what it does, and it's why we're having these conversations. Is it a conspiracy? I don't know if it's a conspiracy, but it is something to be questioned. Why do we think the way we do, and why do we tend to fill memories with gaps or fill memories with ideas on how we thought they were when we don't have a logical explanation for what was? But thanks everybody for watching. You guys tune in next week for another episode of Rams's Reality Podcast. Hope everybody has a good week, and thank y'all for joining. Good night.